y'all, it's Katie. Welcome back to From My Vanity and welcome to a embarrassingly long overdue video. I got a request, I want to say the middle of no, it might have even been the beginning of last year. I know it was before I moved from Virginia, and I moved from Virginia in, I think, May. And I think it was well before that I got a request from someone saying like, hey, I'd love to see your brush recommendations for small, tiny brushes. And I was like, that's a great idea. I love tiny brushes. I'll totally do that. And the time of me filming this, it's March of 2020. So yeah, I am so embarrassed to say that it has taken me this long, but I am finally ready to sit down and share with you guys my tiny brushes. Two reasons why I've been avoiding this / putting it off for so long is one, it's a lot of brushes, so I feel like that's going to take a very long time. But two, I kept stressing over what brushes to pick. And anytime I would think about getting a new brush or I would get a new brush, I'd be like, well, I can't do the video now. I need to test this brush out before I can do the video and share with you guys my top recommendations for tiny brushes. And I finally had to come to grips with myself and be like, Katie, you're never going to get all the brushes in there. And probably as I sit down right now, I'm missing a brush somewhere in my collection that I'm going to find tomorrow and be like, why didn't I mention this? This is a great tiny brush. So I'm just going to sit down right now and we're going to talk about my favorite tiny brushes, and if I need to do an update video, that's fine. It's okay, Kate. You don't have to get it all in one video. So that is what we're going to do today, and I am so sorry to the subscriber who has been waiting this long for the video, but I'm here to share it with you now. So let's just jump right in. Okay, so I have one brush set. Now I really tried not to include brush sets in these. I wanted single brushes that you could easily just pick up that one brush. And another aspect I try to stay away from is brushes you can buy in store. So brushes that I feel like, you know, Real Techniques, even some e.l.f. brushes, Morphe brushes, stuff like that. I feel like those you can go into a store relatively easily, like Ulta, Target, whatnot, and you'll be able to see the size of the brush. So I feel like that's kind of self-explanatory. So for this video, I really try to focus on, okay, you know, what brushes do I love that I bought online? Because that's really hard to buy brushes online, because when you look at it in a picture, like, yeah, it looks tiny, but then you get it and it can be huge. Or yes, it looks huge, and then you get it and it could be tiny. I just find that I personally have a very hard time buying brushes online and knowing the size. So that's why I wanted to focus on online brush brands that I've tried in the past. I have a few that I know you could probably find in store and whatnot, but anyway. Let's just jump right into it, and I'm only naming one brush set, and mainly because all four brushes are tiny brushes, so I like the brush as a whole. There are a couple Real Techniques brushes that are tiny brushes that I absolutely love, but it's one brush in like a pack of, you know, 5 or 6 brushes, so I didn't want to really recommend them because you have to buy the whole brush set. I hope that makes sense. So anyway, this first brush set, I don't know what it's called, but I got it in a BoxyCharm. It's still available, and I think you can get it even in like the regular pink ferrules. I think this was a special edition for BoxyCharm, but these are really fantastic. These two are great, you know, for being just the tiny brushes. I would definitely recommend. They're great for lower lash. They're great for detail work in the crease. But these two are also really nice. Like, this is a nice blending brush. It's more of a flat blending brush, but, you know, I don't mind that. And just to show you a comparison, this is the E40. I'm going to try to do some comparisons of popular brushes that I feel like are well known, just so you can see as a size comparison, because while I tell you, you know, these are small brushes, I'm still on a screen, so it might be hard for you guys to see or be able to gauge how big it is. So here's the popular E40, and that's that size. It works really nice for very detailed blending and whatnot. And same story with this. It's more of a slanted one, but it works very nice, and I've been super happy with it. Yeah, these brushes just get right up into the crease. I've used them so many times. I feel like I use them all the time in my tutorials, and these are amongst the first brushes to get dirty just because they're great, very precise, very detailed brush set, and they're all four, you know, they come in a set, but all four of them I find purpose for, and they're useful in my collection. Okay, I'm going to really try to keep it short and sweet because, like I said, there are a lot of brushes here, and I don't want to be here all day, and I'm going to try to get this done before Levi wakes up. So let's move on to fluffy blending brushes. I feel like, as I said, the popular E40. So here's 4 brushes that I feel like are smaller and more detailed than the E40 brush that I really wanted to make sure I mentioned today. The first one is also from Sigma. This is an E38 brush. So just as a comparison, if you can see there, it's much smaller, has a less of a flare to it. It's a little more dense, but it does the same thing as the E40, but just just a tad bit smaller. So if you have smaller eyes, hooded eyes, it works a whole lot better in my opinion than the E40. So I really like this brush. Another Sigma brush. This isn't really very similar to the E40, but I really like it for being a smaller kind of blending brush. And with the duo fiber aspect, it really is great at blending out a crease. So like if I had a harsh line here where all my color ended, I really enjoy just taking this and working it with like nothing on it even, and just really working very lightly. And with the duo fiberness, I just feel like it's great for very light work. I just find that this is a brush I really didn't expect to like, the E41, but I absolutely love it now, and it's great for smaller eyes in my opinion. I don't have the smallest eyes, so take what I say with a grain of salt. Like, you know, my eyes are the eye shape I have. I know there are people out there with smaller eyes, but I personally enjoy working with smaller brushes, so that's why I have a lot of smaller brushes. It's just easier to do more detailed work. Anyway, moving on. The next brush is the Smashbox Shadow Blender. This is still a larger brush, but if you're wanting a fluffy, large blending brush and you have tiny eyes, I feel like this is great if you want that option, because it is still smaller and not as fluffy as the E40. Pretty close, but it's definitely different, and when I'm wanting a more precise blend, I definitely opt for this over the E40. And then last up, for affordable, let's give it to e.l.f.'s Crease Brush. Now the reason I'm mentioning this is because I could never find this specific one in store. They have several different types of big blending brushes, and one of them, you know, I had to buy, I think I bought all of these off the website because I was curious to see, and you know, one of them is, this is their fluffy blending brush, and then this is their crease brush. It's still nice and fluffy, but as you can see, big size difference. So anyway, to compare with the E40 though, it's a lot smaller, more precise, kind of honestly reminds me of a dupe for the E38, though honestly, I don't know, it's just not as fluffy, or it's not as densely packed as the E40. So if you like something a little lighter, not as dense for blending into your crease or whatnot, definitely try the e.l.f. Crease Brush. But yeah, it's a fantastic brush, but I've only ever been able to buy it online, so that's why I did want to mention it, because it is a nice little brush. Okay, so let's keep with the blending brushes, but we're going to go a lot smaller. So this is the E40 again. I wanted to mention the E36. This one's a little bit more popular, so maybe this won't come as a surprise. But as you can see, or maybe see, I feel like that the white bristles might be kind of hard to see, but it's a lot smaller, so this is really great for really getting into the crease or just buffing out an edge, what have you. It's really nice, and I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite brushes, but if you're not wanting to spend however much the E36 is, a dupe for it, honestly, like dead on dupe in my opinion, is the Stilazzi Mini Crease Fluff L217. I'm not 100% sure how much this is, but I feel like Stilazzi tends to be a couple dollars cheaper, but these two brushes do the same job in my opinion in my collection. And moving on from that, a couple more, they're still fluffy blending brushes, but they're a little more domed and a little more there's more bristles to it, so it's better for more detailed, more building up, not so much a light and airy. You got more density to these. But this is the Sigma E42 brush. I really do like this brush. It kind of reminds me of the popular E45 brush, but it's just a lot smaller, and so I feel like it fits into little areas easier, and I'm able to get more detailed blending than with this E45. So really like this brush. And then if you want a more affordable option than the E24 brush, this is the e.l.f. Detail Crease Brush. Again, a brush I've never been able to find in store, but I bought it online, and as you can see, it's pretty darn similar. The only thing is it doesn't have quite the point and taper as the Sigma does, but it's a great little crease brush. And just to compare, this is the crease brush, and then this is the Detail Crease Brush, and then this is a Sigma brush. So there's kind of the size comparison between those three. And then last up, this is kind of new, at least I thought it was new. I saw it on the Ulta website, but this is from NYX, and this is their 44 brush. This little guy is fantastic. It's got a great taper to it down the sides. It's nicely packed. It's not too stiff. It's very light, and I really do like it for blending and buffing into my crease. Kind of gives me what I like in like this more detailed brush, but it has more of a taper to it, so I really do like this over this brush. But again, nice detailed little blending brush, works great in your crease and is really great for getting into smaller areas, or if you just have less space to work with. This brush is really fantastic. 44 brush, I really do like it. Wouldn't mind having more of them. Moving over to kind of packing brushes, let me pull those out. Kind of following on the heels of the other NYX brush, this is also from NYX. It's a 43. It's a great little brush for packing on the inner corner. You guys have heard me rave about the L210 brush from Stilazzi, which I'm also mentioning it as a great tiny brush. As you can see, they're pretty darn identical. The only difference is that the Stilazzi has more of a puffiness to it, so it kind of works a little bit better for blending in my opinion, because you can kind of use the tip to really blend, whereas the tip of the NYX is pretty flat and doesn't work that well, but it's great for packing on. I really do like that, but it is, as you can see, a very thin. Okay, my battery pack just died, but I think I was just comparing these two and showing you how thin this is, but this is great for also not only packing, but also blending, using the tip to blend or even the sides to blend. This one, I prefer it and just feel like it works the best just for packing, and I reach for a different brush to really blend it out because the tip just is a little too pointed. There's not enough bristles, there's not enough fullness to it, but still, both great brushes. Would highly recommend them if you're wanting a tiny brush. And another brush that's good for packing, but not only good for packing, but also just getting into the crease, is this E27 brush from Sigma. This is a fantastic little brush. I feel like the popular one is the E25, and that's what I always had beforehand, but I feel like I never really grabbed for it because, I don't know, it's just a little too large for my preferences. But then I tried the E27 brush, and now I love this brush because it's just needed to be a little bit smaller for my preferences. So if you tried this brush and found it was too big for you, get the E27. It is by far a lot smaller and just works a lot better for those tiny little areas. And it's another brush that I really do love. This E27, if you're just wanting to grab a couple brushes from Sigma to try, definitely get this one if you like smaller brushes over the E25. Okay, now let's talk about some lid brushes. These are brushes I like to pack on shimmer onto my lid, and I like them to be very small so I can do more detailed work. I feel like, you know, very popular is these types of, what is this, the E55 brush, and even what other brush from Sigma that I feel like is pretty popular? The E54 brush. I feel like these are very popular in the YouTube beauty community space for packing things onto the lid, but for me, I feel like these are just a little bit smaller so they get the detail work done a little bit more to my preferences. So for a brush like the E55 and even the E54, these two, the Stilazzi L221 brush is really great because, as you can see, it's smaller. Let me get these down. I keep distracting myself with them. It's smaller than the other two brushes, but still has the bulk, the taperness to it to really pick up and really pack on shimmer. And it's very firmly packed like the other ones, but it's just a lot smaller. Like the E, it's not too much smaller than the E54 brush, so if you don't want super tiny, this is nice. But if this is a little too big for you, then the L221 brush would be perfect because it's a brush that I have 2 or 3 of in my collection, maybe more, I forget. I have several of them and I always reach for them. And if I'm needing something just a little bit more precise, the Sigma E56 brush is great. I mean, as you can see, this is a really tiny brush, but it still picks up shadows really nicely, especially metallics, and it really applies it nicely. Once again, really great at applying it and really cutting out your crease. Kind of the same story with this type of brush, but it's just a little bit smaller, a little bit sharper, a little bit easier to get that crisp line. Now, because it's smaller, you have to work a little bit longer at it, but it's great, and it's also really nice for applying inner corner highlight as well. I really hope I'm not going too fast here. I'm trying not to spend too long. Just know that all these brushes, I'm recommending them. I'm not really talking about the quality of them because all of these brushes I feel like are great quality considering the price tag. Just want to throw that out there that, yeah, I'm not going to really speak to the quality of the bristles and the ferrules and all that, just because overall I really think they're all fantastic and worth the price tag, and I don't want to spend too long going over and being repetitive. Okay, this brush is super unique to my collection, but I really, really like it. It is the Sigma E47 brush. As you can see, it almost looks like something to pack on the lid, but it's not. It's actually a blender brush, and this is great if you want to do really detailed blending, especially on my outer corner or into my crease. It's just super tiny and, like I said, unique. I don't have a brush like it, and I find myself reaching for it whenever I need to really work on blending 2 shades together, but I don't want to get too big of a brush. Even this, or the Sigma E40 brush, I don't want anything too big to mess everything up. I just need just a little detailed blending. This is just a perfect little taper on it. It works fantastic, and I really enjoy it. And if you like tiny brushes, this E47 brush is tiny and works great. Oh, I meant to mention this earlier, but this is the Smashbox Lip Brush. If you also like this E56 brush, this is very similar to it. It's just a little bit smaller, but it works the same. I tend to use this, though, exclusively for inner corner highlight because it is so much smaller than this one. I feel like this one is still large enough to apply to my lid shade, but this would take a long time. But anyway, all that to say, it's a great brush, and I really like it for applying shimmers, specifically for me, for my inner corner. Okay, speaking of inner corner, 2 brushes I really love for my inner corner, and they're very detailed and small. I'm only going to mention this. I know I said I wasn't going to mention stuff that you could easily find in stores, but I have to mention my e.l.f. concealer brush. I feel like I rave about this all the time, but I think I have 5 or 6 of these in my collection, and it is perfect for popping on the inner corner, especially if you have sensitive eyes. You need something small because I find that getting too much shimmer in my eyes really makes them water, so this helps me apply it around without hitting my lash please, around my inner corner and keeps it from getting in my eye. And then following that, also the S206 brush is really, really good. Kind of the same story with the e.l.f. one. It's just a little bit bigger, so it gets the job done a little bit faster than the e.l.f. But again, another fantastic brush, really great for packing on shimmer, very detailed in a certain spot. Oh, and I did want to also say, I have a lot of pencil brushes, like really tiny brushes, or even these little short shader brushes used for lower lash line, but I feel like those are more popular and easier to purchase online because they're a little more clearly labeled in that it's like a short shader brush or a smudge brush, something along those lines. So you can kind of see online a pencil brush, just they tend to be smaller. So I didn't mention any of those, both, you know, to save time, but also because I feel like those are a little easier to shop for. I mean, a pencil brush is a pencil brush, it's a pencil brush. I don't really find huge pencil brushes, but so I just want to throw that out there. I don't have any of those mentioned here. But smaller brushes that I use for my lower lash line that are even smaller than a pencil brush is this Sigma L04 brush and this Precise Smudger from Smashbox. Both of these, if you can see them, are so tiny. They are great for very precise work. I tend to like to use these when I'm wanting to put a very dark color right against my lash line and really erase that line you can get from where your like black gel liner goes and then your shadow goes. It can really get right in there and buff it out, and works beautifully to smudge out your lower lashes and to really diffuse shadow right there. So these two brushes I really enjoy in there. I think amongst the tiniest brushes in my collection. So I will say this Precise Smudger, I often use in my inner corner as well. It works there too. Okay, only a couple more brushes to go. We're going to talk about liner brushes. This, I wanted to still mention these because I feel like for eyeliner, it's kind of like, well, there's so many eyeliner brushes, it's a little bit easier to get them online and know you're going to get a smaller brush, but honestly, not really. I feel like from Sigma, I bought 5 or 6 different kinds of liner brushes. I want to say they have that many variety on their website, and I bought them all, and they're so drastic. Some are super tiny, some are really big, and I feel like a lot of times brands, when you buy a liner brush, they're very big or chunky or just don't do the job. So I wanted to name my 3 favorites. They're all from Sigma because Sigma just nails it with getting the really tiny brushes. My number 1 favorite is the E06 wing liner brush, because if you're working with gel liner and you're doing wings, this is fantastic because if you can even see that, it has a slant to it. It has a little slant to the actual bristles. It's not just a pen liner that comes to a point. It has a curve to it, so it makes it so easy to not only draw it out, but then turn it and use that curve to connect it back. And when I did gel liners, like I want to say this is back when Olivia was a baby, so it's been a while, but I used to love doing gel wing liner every day. Now I have to do liquid liner because I don't have time for it, but this was the brush I would go to all the time, and I want to say I have 4 in my collection because I would just rotate through them and I get them dirty so much that I would need to have another brush on hand because I didn't have time to wash them. And then the other 2 brushes I did want to include is the E11 and the E10 from Sigma. Now they're both basically the same, except the E11 is shorter than the E10. So if you like to have a shorter, like you want your bristles to be shorter and to not have that much flexibility with the tip, go with the E11. But if you like a little more flexibility and like a little more length in your liner brush, and this is just a straight liner brush, no curves to it, it just comes up straight, go with the E10. That's really the only difference, but these are so tiny, and I have decluttered so many liner brushes in the past because they're too big, too chunky, and just too pointless in my opinion. Yeah, like for example, this is from Stilazzi. This is the L202 liner brush, and maybe online it doesn't look that bad, but when you compare it to these, let me show you up close. Do we see that? Big difference. So that is why I wanted to take the time to mention my favorite liner brushes. If you want really tiny, precise brushes to get that gel liner, or to work with gel liners, these are fantastic. Okay, so I feel like I just raced through that video, but I hope it was informative for you guys. I didn't really want to spend too long on the brushes just because in general, brush videos on YouTube don't do that well, at least for me personally. So I just wanted to kind of run through and just explain why I like the brush and not really dive into the quality of the brush, as I said, and the quality of the bristles and all that. For the Stilazzi and the Smashbox brushes, I have separate videos where I have talked about the quality of their brushes, so if you want to check those out, I'll have them linked down below. And then I feel like I'm always talking about Sigma brushes. I've been using them for a long time, so I definitely attest to their quality. So I hope it's still informative, even though I didn't really dive into the nitty-gritty with each brush. I hope you guys still found this video informative. But yeah, with all that said, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch another one of my videos. And on your way out, if you feel like it, hit the thumbs up button. It always helps me out here in the YouTube algorithm, and I really do appreciate it. So yeah, with all that said, thank you guys so very much for watching, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys.